Welcome to the Nick Taylor Horror Show. Hospitality is a no-holds-barred indie thriller with compellingly memorable characters and a healthy dose of Americana pulp. It's not horror per se, but it utilizes a number of horror elements which really effectively flavor this southern-fried neo-noir with a fun, enjoyable eeriness. I sat down with writer-director duo David Guglielmo, dude, I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, and Nick Chakwin, who were kind enough to take us through their journey on getting Hospitality, their second film, off of the ground and into a theatrical release. Along the way, we dug into details about how they broke into filmmaking and had a great chat that really ended up loaded with gems of insight for aspiring indie filmmakers. We got into everything from the directing and writing processes, along with tips for getting your script into the hands of the right producers. Lots of great advice in here. You might want to take notes on this one. I had a great time meeting them. Hope you enjoy listening to them. Here are Nick Chakwin and David Guglielmo. And David, I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. So how's everything going with Hospitality? I got to see it last night. Really enjoyed it a lot. It was really fun, slow burn kind of thriller. And yeah, man, I love the characters and everything. So can you give me a sense of how the project came about?
Yeah. So Nick and I made our first film called No Way to Live. Completely grassroots. You know, we raised the money. We shot it over a period of 6 months, just kind of piecing it together, not knowing if it was ever going to become a feature, but doing everything we could to complete it. And that process just, I think from writing the script to getting distribution was 4 years.
Wow.
So we learned more than we ever did in film school, and we're really proud of the film. It's available on Amazon Prime right now. But Hospitality, interestingly enough, was the opposite. You know, it happened very quickly. We wrote the script in 4 days, just in a real, creative space.
Wow.
It just came out, and we were like, oh wow, this is really cool. Let's send out some emails to producers that we admire. And within a week, we had a green light from Howard at Can Do Films.
Wow.
And he was just coming off his Academy Award nomination. So, we were really thrilled. And a month later, we were shooting. We only had 13 days to do this. It's an ultra low budget movie.
Wow.
So yeah, it was just kind of like, run and gun. Before we knew it, we had our second film.
That's awesome. The characters or the actors really seem to have a really natural chemistry. Did you guys do a lot of rehearsing?
No, we actually didn't really. We weren't afforded that, unfortunately, because of the nature of the budget and the time frame we were working with. So it kind of was just luck that they all get along so well and have the chemistry that they do. I think we had, maybe just one table read and then we were on set. With that said, Emmanuel and JR, they are good friends. They've been friends for, I think, years and years. So that
like 20 years.
Yeah, maybe 20 years. So that was
wow.
a really great asset for us because they were just so comfortable with each other. And so we were able to use that in the scene work. But like between Emmanuel and Sam, that was just, sometimes it just clicks, and it really clicked with them, and that's just worth its weight in gold. So.
Well, it was like summer camp, man. Like, honestly, when we were there, everyone was best friends. Like, it was really a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, you could tell that chemistry was super duper strong. So you guys have, you guys both have a history of being casting agents, right?
No, just David. Just David.
Just David.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. What happened there was that because No Way to Live took so long to get going, we had hired a casting director by the name of Matthew LaSalle, who's great, and we lost the money. At one point, we had like $500,000 to make No Way to Live. And then the guy was like, oh, I just found out that, indie films don't really make money. It's a risk. And I was like, well, yeah.
Holy shit.
So he pulled the rug out and we had no money. And while we were raising, $1,000 here and there to make the movie, Matt was so great. And he was like, look, you don't have to pay me again. Just like, I'm with you whenever you need me to send out an offer, let's just get the movie done. So I became close with him. And afterwards he said, why don't you, come work as my assistant? Because I had quit my job to make the movie. I was working at a juice bar, and I thought I was going to have to go and get another job at a bar or something. And he was like, well, look, you're like a human IMDb. You know every actor. That's what you need. I'll teach you programs, So I became his assistant, and then eventually worked my way up to associate. And then I was like, well, I can do this. I know so many producers just from being in indie film. So I just declared myself a casting director, and I started getting work. So for the past 2 or 3 years, I've been a casting director.
That's awesome. I mean, I'd imagine that would just give you such a front row seat to observing how other producers work and operate, not to mention the networking element of it all. I mean, that sounds like it's a really smart and instrumental step towards becoming a director or producer.
Yeah. I always tell people, and I always believe that there is no one way to do this. There's no one, route to, making movies. And I just love to be a part of movies in any capacity. I mean, I really love casting. I love casting. I love producing. I mean, eventually Nick and I are going to start producing in our company that we're doing now. And, I just want to see good stuff get made. And I kind of have a corner now on the indie market and also horror, because I'm the head of casting for Fangoria. So the stuff that they bring to me is just like, up and coming emerging artists, a lot of the times female filmmakers, and they're making really cool horror movies, and it's fresh and it's exciting. And, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and horror is just such an exciting genre right now. I mean, I've always clearly been a huge horror fan, but horror as an industry always goes up during times of social unrest. And it's usually when some of the smartest horror movies get made and the most iconic. Like the 50s was the age of the atomic era, so that's why you had all those monster movies. And now, I mean, obviously the kind of quintessential movie as far as today in horror in terms of social unrest is definitely Get Out. But I think we're going to see more and more really interesting kind of biting titles coming out that are just really indicative of where we're at right now. Yeah, it's an exciting time for horror.
Hey, have you read, there's a book by David J. Scull, and it's really great. It's called The Monster Show. And it's all about that. Yeah. You have to read it. It's all about that. It goes through every decade, and it kind of examines these movies that they may not have even known that they were, having social commentary. It was just kind of a gut reaction to whatever was going on. And
like collective unconscious.
Yeah, it's really comprehensive. It's really easy to read. He's a great author. He wrote a book on Todd Browning, a biography on Todd Browning.
Wow.
Yeah, you got to check it out. It's called
I don't know how I never found that before. That's awesome. The Monster Show book, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Another good one is Shock Value, and it's all about the history of recent horror movies. I think in the past 30 years.
Yeah, that was the one. They had a De Palma chapter in there and everything.
Yeah, a really good one.
Yeah, that was cool.
I think one of the most fascinating and I think helpful pieces of advice, and also just things I've observed from talking to multiple people, is kind of being in positions where you can make a lateral move into directing or producing, where you start with some sort of other position.
For me, I'm always the kind of person that if I am an assistant, I'm the assistant that convenientally leaves the script on the on the desk of the boss. I don't care. Like I'll always do that. I'll always send the emails. I'll always follow up on the emails. Hey, did you see this? Until I get a response. Because I believe that the stuff that I'm giving them is actually an opportunity for them. I really believe in the work. So yeah, I think there's always a way in, and I think it starts with making sure the work is ready and believing in yourself.
Right, and just kind of being ready for that opportunity when it comes, having the scripts ready to go, and like that.
Yeah.
Cool. So you guys are, clearly a directorial and writing and producing team, and it seems like it's kind of rare that there can be kind of such dynamic partnerships. And I was just wondering, what did you guys find to be the key to your collaboration?
Well, I think the first thing would probably be the communication. Being on the same page is really, really key. Especially when we're writing and especially when we're on set directing, we need to be one voice, one unified point of view. So what we do to get there is just to always be talking and always be, on the same page, brainstorming and, bouncing ideas back and forth, so that when we get to the point of someone else coming in, whether it's an actor or a producer asking, questions, we both know what we're the same answer. We're both going to say the same thing, because we've already talked that through and debated about it and figured out how we feel. What would you say?
Yeah. I mean, Nick and I are best friends, and we're always just in contact, talking about everything. And I think that our personalities balance each other out in a nice way that you can't plan. That's not something. It just has to happen.
Right.
And we like the same stuff. If I see a movie that I think is great, or I read a book that I think is great, I'll give it to him, and we'll just kind of trade stuff back and forth. So I think creatively we're on the same wavelength, and we're both really excited. And I think that that's something that's really gone a long way. The actors, we're paying these actors $100 a day to do this movie. If we're not excited about it, and if we don't have that passion kind of seeping out through every pore, they're not going to do it, because there's just no other reason. I mean, it's contagious, and we're just like, right now, I have to pinch myself. I mean, I have a movie that's in theaters, it's playing at Universal City Walk right now. I've been going like every other night. I've been going and just sitting with an audience just to hear them react. It's just, I'm living my best life.
And how has that process been, sitting and experiencing the film with an audience?
It's so cool. I mean, the other day, actually, I left. When I walked out of the theater, I went up to a stranger and I just said, "Hey, what did you think of that?" And he was like, "Yeah, it was cool. It was good." And I was like, I want to know what the general public thinks. It's like, the film industry is this bubble, and I think that they judge movies differently. And I think that I don't really want to talk to, people in the industry all the time. I want to go to the mall and I want to ask, people
Right.
what they thought, because that's America and that's the world,
Yeah. No, I think that's really interesting. And I think it's important to kind of be in touch with your audience instead of being in just this insulated kind of echo chamber of the film industry, so to speak. I mean, it's probably wise to do both, but I think having a foot in culture and in people and in your overall audience is a huge step. I do marketing work as well.
These people, they have no idea what a high concept thriller is, or whatever these terms that you're using. They just want to be entertained. And in the end of the day, I think our movies work in that way. We've had terrible festival reception. We never got into a big festival or any festival with No Way to Live or this movie. And I always hear from agents and everyone, all their thoughts and what they think could be better about it and all that stuff. But then you sit a bunch of people down, that just want to be entertained, and they're reacting. They're vocally reacting, and they love the twist. And I think in the end of the day, we're thinking from a marketing perspective, and they're not. They don't care. They don't care what genre it is. They just want to have a good time. Right. And that, I want to stay in that headspace. I try not to, you want to be savvy with like the kind of stuff you're putting out to make sure it's marketable and, that you're going to make money. But I think keeping the general audience in mind is important.
Nice. So for kind of budding filmmakers who want to get their first feature off the ground and they're just kind of overwhelmed by the amount of information out there and all the conflicting advice, what was some of the most formidable advice that you guys were given that really enabled you to get your first movie off the ground, so that you had a calling card and that you had something done and that you were really able to kind of get this part of your career rocking and rolling? Like, what was the most formidable advice that you guys received during that beginning stage?
Yeah. Well, once we had the script that we knew to be the one that we wanted to do first, that we really believed in, once we had the writing done, I remember a time where we were just, after actually, while we were still raising the money, when the first amount of money, we were trying to get to $500,000. We were working with this young producer guy, and we had this number in mind. We were like, we have to raise X amount of money to pull a trigger and shoot the film. And we were sending emails out, that looked like spam. We're like, we just need $5,000 more. We just need 10,000. And I just remember like getting advice from a filmmaker, a director friend, being like, pull a trigger. Like, why do you need that? You don't need that. Go shoot, shoot with what you have. And we were like, wait, what? Like, we had this whole idea because we got one budget from one, line producer. And that's just really not the case. You can get 3,000 different budgets from 3,000 different producers. You just need to pull the trigger with what you have. If if you have some money raised, I think people spend years waiting to hit the magic number, so
Right.
That was an eye opener for us. And just hitting the pavement, like that first year, or I guess it was a couple of years, but that beginning period, we were crazy. We were just emailing everyone and calling people that we haven't met, bothering everyone. We probably burned so many bridges, but who cares? We were just so rabid trying to get this movie going because we just really believed in it. And I think you need that passion. You really need that, because you can, it's easier than ever to get your hands on a camera.
Yeah.
You'll hear that, but that's for, there's a reason that people say that. It's just, what do you think?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I'm the kind of, I'm trying to be a little smarter with money, but I'm the kind of guy who, if we wrote another No Way to Live or Hospitality, something that we were so passionate about today and nobody wanted to do it, I would look into my savings account and just be like, all right, and just put it right into the movie. That's just, I'm always so close to that. So yeah, I think, risks pay off.
Right.
There's an alternate reality here where we have
Sorry, man, you cut out for a second.
movie. We only have half of No Way to Live, and we wasted, $80,000 or something like that. There's that. That was always a possibility. So I think the advice is not to be reckless, but to just make sure that you're in that headspace. You don't actually have to do it, but you know why? Because there's so much content out there, and people are going to ask you why. Why does this movie need to be made? Is it just because you want to make a movie? Is it ego? Is it? What is it? And the answer should be no. This is the story that I need to tell.
Right. It just should be this burning kind of unexplainable desire to tell that story.
We're in a place right now where I think that that's usually equated with something that's autobiographical. It's your exact story, and it's not the case. Everything's autobiographical. If you wrote it, everything has you in it, and I think that sometimes it takes a little more convincing for us because we're making movies that are so far away from our life experience. We're making a movie in the 50s, or we're making a movie about a woman who used to be a prostitute, and people kind of look at you sideways, like, really, this is the story? But it's this is the story.
Yeah. Well, that touches on an interesting point. I mean, there's that really terrible piece of advice to write what you know, but obviously, if you've never been an astronaut before, nobody could have written 2001: A Space Odyssey, So when you guys are approaching subject matter that you don't have direct experience with, what is your research process like?
Well, I think people take write what you know and they interpret it the wrong way. I think, you're completely right. Don't write what you know doesn't mean write the story of two guys from New Jersey and Connecticut. It's that's not a movie that we want to watch. It's write the feelings and the experiences that you've had can translate into different characters and different time periods, and it's just writing with a genuine nature to it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, these worlds are worlds that I immerse myself in. Whether it be with classic movies or with literature. And an LA Times review just came out for Hospitality, and they compared it to James M. Cain. And it's well, then Yes, obviously I'm writing what I know because he's my favorite author. Postman Always Rings Twice is my favorite book of all time. And the fact that he just got that with there being no actual literal reference in there. He just got it
Wow.
from the vibe. So, that's translating. And I guess I am writing what I know.
That's really, really cool. Yeah, one thing that you touched on earlier reminded me of, I just did an interview with Bill Lustig, the director of Maniac from 1979. Awesome, awesome guy. But one thing that he mentioned when he was doing Maniac, the way that he started to get producers on board was he just started filming. And the fact that he had built some momentum, some semblance of like footage in the can, that's when directors realize, okay, this is a real tangible movie. Because there's so many people walking around with, oh, I got an idea, or oh, I got a script. But he said that when he started filming, that's when all the other producers, like the major producers, started jumping on board because he had something tangible. And he demonstrated to them that he actually has the ability and gravitas to start making something, to do something tangible instead of just having this kind of conceptual idea. But yeah, the way he phrased it is you got to get the train out of the station. And then that's when all the other producers start jumping on board.
Yeah, that's what we did. I mean, we did that with No Way to Live. Every time we shot something, we cut it together and we made kind of like a sizzle reel. It was almost like a fake trailer for the movie. And once we did that, it was proof of concept. Now everyone was like, "Oh, okay, I see what you're going for. This looks like a cool movie," and it definitely helped us raise money.
We even did that before we started shooting. I think we would tell people, if we had a meeting and it went well and with the guy in New York, we would be like, oh, okay, we'd bring that back to LA and say, we've got a guy in New York that's, thinking about putting this money in. And then the guy's just like, whoa, really? And we just built our own momentum, even if we had none, just, you
always want to make it like the train is leaving the station, because it is. Because the thing is, whoever we reach out to, we're not contingent on that person. We're going to make this movie no matter what. It's like, do you want to be a part of this? If not, like, we're still making it. We're not going to just wait around.
Right. And I think creating that urgency, it seems like that is really effective in starting to get people to jump on board.
Totally. 100%.
Would love to talk about your writing process. Obviously, you guys are really, really collaborative when it comes to approaching a script. You said that you were able to knock out the first draft in 4 days. How do you guys approach collaborative writing?
So when we first started writing features separately, we would send them to each other for advice, and we were friends in college. And then when I moved out here, we kept doing that. And then, when David decided to move to LA, he crashed on my couch for a couple of weeks while he was looking for an apartment. And that's when we started writing together, because we were under one roof, and we're like, let's just, we're both in between scripts. We're like, let's just try one. And so those first few scripts like that, we were actually literally in the same room, kind of passing the laptop back and forth. And it was totally like nerve wracking for me, because I used to outline. I used to like really do a lot of work before writing, and David doesn't outline. And so for me, it was like jumping in the deep end. I was like pass the laptop. Okay, go write. And I'm just like, oh shit, So It was a very cool awakening in a way to just change my writing process. But so that kind of graduated to emailing scripts back and forth, more like normal people, I guess. But we still like to keep the idea of passing back and forth and trying to, surprise each other, but, stay within the same tone and kind of just slowly pave each other's work over. So it's one voice, and it works for us.
It works in a nice way, because basically if we're doing 5 pages each a day, and that's minimum, that's like the rule, you have to do at least 5. When Nick sends me his 5, I'm going back, I'm kind of, looking over I'm smoothing out the 5 he gave me, and then I'm writing my 5. And then I send it back to him. He smooths out my 5, and then he writes another 5. So by the time you have a first draft, you're basically on your second draft. Your first draft is kind of like ready to be seen. I never. Yeah, it works, and I never outline, and I don't think there's anything wrong with writers who do. I think most writers do. Most writers I love do. but for me, it's always come off as a little contrived. If I have to fit the characters in the places that I've kind of, predetermined they're going to go.
Right.
And I often say this because I think it's interesting, but for hospitality, whenever someone showed up at the door, I didn't know if they were good or bad. They had to show me. And, I wasn't sure if Cam, the Sam Trammell role, I wasn't sure if he was going to be a good guy or a bad guy. I wasn't sure if she was going to stay with him in the end. It just, they have to show you who they are. And then an interesting thing happens because they exist in this kind of real, this murky, this gray area where he's not all good or all bad. He's just him. And I think that in the end, when she, spoiler alert, when she does what she does and she leaves, I think that nobody goes, "Oh, I saw that coming," because I didn't see it coming. So, there's no way.
Right. No, that's really cool. And I've heard that there's a lot of writers. Well, there's a number of writers who do write with an outline, like James Patterson, and then there's a number of ones who don't. And Tarantino specifically talks about how he'll just create a scenario. He'll know his characters. He'll put them in a room together, and he'll just watch the drama unfold. He'll just simply observe.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because then you're not even doing it. Sometimes characters will say things that you've never even thought of or said. It's kind of an out of body experience. It's really
right.
Cool.
Like, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
That's cool. Nick, do you still outline, or do you guys both just kind of at this point let everything unfold?
Don't tell David, but yeah, no, I still do a little outlining. Not nearly as much as I used to, but I do love writing. I don't know. I love writing a first draft in a notebook with a pen. We don't really work that way. We start with a laptop, but I think, I do like, there is something you get when you write with pen and notebook because you just kind of like let your brain just, spill and like,
right.
Even if you don't like something, maybe you cross it out with one line and keep going. And then when you go back, you can kind of see your first idea. With the computer, there's a tendency to look at it like the final draft, and you just kind of you delete and make it look clean. And I like a little mess in the beginning.
Right.
So yeah, I kind of do it on the side a little bit. But I've definitely done it way less now that I work with David.
Well, I started off doing the same thing, writing longhand. We were both writing longhand. We started collaborating that way, and then it was like, I can't read your fucking handwriting. Yeah. This is never going to work.
Right.
So we trained ourselves to work on the laptop, but you do have to resist the kind of, the editing, the finality of it all,
Right.
You do have to resist that. And I'm sure some of the stuff we've deleted, could have been good. It was just like in the moment you're thinking it's not good enough,
Well, that's also part of the process is checking each other. You like with co-writing, you have to have little rules. Where say I put a joke in or something that's supposed to be funny, or whatever, and David's like, that's not funny. Like I have a chance to like kind of try again, like explain it or, let it live for a little longer. But if it doesn't work after that, it just goes away, and that way you're not precious with anything, it's healthier that way.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, it sounds like having a writing partner can be a real game changer for aspiring writers because, I mean, on top of everything else, like you'd mentioned, one draft or the first draft automatically becomes the second draft because you both are kind of polishing each other's work, but also the accountability factor. I mean, the fact that you guys agree to a quota, it's 5 pages a day. We each have to do it. I'm sure that is way more motivating than just telling yourself if you're writing alone, hey, I got to write 5 pages a day. I got to write 5 pages tomorrow. It's like, no, my writing partner wrote 5 pages a day. I better write 5 pages or I'm going to feel like a piece of shit.
Yeah. It's going to the gym. It's the same thing.
Right.
That's right. It. When, so many times if you're going alone, not only can you just say, oh, I'm tired today and not go. You're not going to say that if the guy's in front of your house with the car, beeping the horn. Exactly. But also, if I go to the gym alone, I leave after 15 minutes, like you need someone there to be like, no, we're doing our hour, and that's the same thing. Yeah. It keeps you disciplined. And it's also, sometimes you need just a bouncing board of ideas, you need to, you need to just say it out loud, because in your head it can get a little. It basically takes a process that's very introverting and makes it not as introverting.
Interesting. Yeah. So one of the things that Emmanuel had mentioned on an interview is that you guys are very collaborative with actors when you're on set. And there's certain movies where you can tell that there was collaboration between the directors and the actors. There's just like a kind of natural, very realistic flow. I mean, Scorsese allows a lot of actors to just come up with ideas on the spot and try different things and do like a little bit of improv. And I think it's in certain cases just seems to create this very real and natural magic. But it also at the same time seems like it's really important for indie films to do that. In as much as you can't be too precious about delivering the line exactly as you saw it in your own head. But could you talk about your approach to collaborating with actors and how that's and whether or not it's helped serve the films?
Yeah. I think that if the actors have a lot of questions, it goes back to the script, and obviously something isn't working with the script. I think that it should be very self-explanatory. Good writing is it's like I really believe in kind of the David Mamet school of just like, it's there, it's all there for you. Having said that, if an actor comes with an idea, maybe that idea is better than yours. Maybe, right. So we're definitely open to collaborating. But there should be no confusion as to what is the original intention. Now, if we want to, go different places from there, that's a whole other story, and we're open to hearing that. But at the same time, you have to put your foot down sometimes and say no. Yeah. So, I think that you have to go with your gut. Nobody can be sensitive. You have to just talk everything out, because sometimes actors come to you with ideas that are just wild. It's so different. I'm like, well, that seems cool, but that's a different character, Right. In the end of the day, I mean, that's why everyone says casting is, 80% of the work or whatever. It really is, I think that you just have to make sure everyone's on the same page. And even when I'm casting for other people, I'm like, look, have a Skype conversation with them. Make sure you're on the same page.
Right.
Because like once you are, then it's smooth sailing. If you're not, it's going to be friction the whole way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, as a casting director, do you have any kind of unique approaches to casting? For instance, are there any different elements of the audition process that may or may not be as common? How do you approach casting your actors, considering your kind of insider knowledge?
Yeah, I think what I do differently, just from being in different casting offices and seeing how other casting directors work, is that when I'm auditioning an actor, I'm acting with them. And I think that a lot of people, maybe they're embarrassed and they don't want to do that, but it's like, you get so much better work. They can't act with a brick wall. Right. And when I hear these casting directors doing it in this monotone way, I'm like, you're not helping anyone. You're not giving them anything. So I think actors are surprised by that. I'm off book for all the sides. I don't need to hold them or anything. And I just really engage. I really look at them and engage, and I act with them. And it's not because I think I'm a great actor. It's because, like I want them to see, I want the director to see the closest thing to what the movie is going to be. And then when you do that, I think that does translate over to when I direct, and it definitely translates to when I write. Acting is really important for a writer director. I always say that writing is the same thing as acting. It's just one is in front of the camera and one's not.
Right.
But when the characters, you have to inhabit those characters. You have to be in those headspaces. And when that character is feeling something, you should be feeling that same exact thing. And like, I take it to the point of, if I'm not about to cry while I'm writing that crying scene, maybe that character shouldn't be crying, because sometimes you read scripts and you're like, whoa, this person doesn't understand emotions. You just went from this emotion all the way over to this emotion in a second. It doesn't go like that. It's a gradual thing, or whatever it is, I mean, I think that having an understanding of acting and of emotions just helps as a casting director, as a writer, as a director, as everything. I mean, and then when you talk to them, when you talk to those actors, they know that you get it, and they appreciate that.
I probably feel like they're in good hands. No, it's pretty fascinating. It reminds me of there was an interview with, again, Quentin Tarantino a few years ago, where they talk about his approach to what he calls method writing, where he just becomes the characters as he's writing them. And he mentioned when he was writing Jackie Brown, he became Ordell Roby for like a year and was just walking around pretending that he was Ordell for a year. I think he did some interviews and he kind of acting that way, and you can kind of tell. But yeah, I think there's something really integral about getting in touch with the overall headspace of the characters as you're writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm such a giant fan of Tarantino and basically everything he does. I think he's I think he's the greatest artist we have.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
But I think what you were saying, I think what he means too, and it's like it's all about empathy. It's like having empathy for each character and coming from their point of view, whether it's a good guy or a bad guy or somewhere in between. Just I think it's so important.
Mm-hmm. Like not judging your characters, just kind of letting them be themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're in this, and we're also in this place right now too, where it's very easy to impose a kind of morality, or political correctness, or especially in period pieces. I just read this article from this film critic who is kind of criticizing the Coen brothers' new movie for the women roles in it, and I was rushing out the door. I didn't read the article. It could be very smart, but it just kind of got me thinking, like, well, you have to stay true to the world that you're writing in. And if it's a period piece, you can't impose a kind of modern sensibility on that period. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to write, the truth, the ugliness of, of these things. But I think being objective is just the most important thing, when you're writing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's something I really hope doesn't go by the wayside in this era of very heightened political correctness, that people don't start downwriting the authenticity of certain characters because they want to be politically correct. Like, again, going back to Tarantino, when I watched Reservoir Dogs not even that long ago, most of those characters are pretty racist and sexist, and you hear their dialogue. But it's those characters, those who these guys were. They're not exactly heroized. But yeah, the characters, some of these characters are a little ignorant and a little racist, and they're not being portrayed as good guys. They're bad guys, but some of that dialogue is very politically incorrect, but it feels so authentic to these guys. It's just part of who they are for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, some of my favorite writers are like George V. Higgins,
Thompson.
Yeah. I mean, but in this case, like that street writing, that kind of like Richard Price, George Pelicanos, that kind of, and there's a casual racism, and it comes from ignorance. But I hear, I'm from Jersey. I'm Italian American. I mean, I've heard a lot of shit like that, and a lot of these people, they just don't know any better, and it could be alarming, like when you hear it, when you hear these things. But it's also, you want to write with the most authenticity possible, and that's why I admire people like Scorsese and like Tarantino, because they get it. They get the way these people talk.
Yeah. It makes all the difference as far as the character's authenticity. Cool. Last few questions. So you mentioned that you guys had gone to film school. In retrospect, is that a move that you recommend for young aspiring filmmakers?
It's tough. We can argue either side of that. It's tough because we're both dealing with student loans, so it's really tough to come from, 100% either way. I think that I think I could make the case that it's important. It's the reason I met David. I think I probably, or maybe I would have taken longer to meet him. But it's great because it's a safe space to try and fail. We made a bunch of short films. We were on, SVA, especially where we went, is almost like a trade school. We were in class, a few weeks in, loading 16 millimeter Bolex cameras and shooting film very cool, like really, really hands-on. And that's sort of where I figured out that I wanted to direct, because before that I thought I wanted to edit, and then I got on set for the first time. You know what I mean? So you're able to try and fail and try again and practice working with people. But, I don't know. It's tough because you can also do that on your own if you have the right people around and if you have the right resources, which, are easier and easier to get these days. I mean, where do you stand today on it, David? Because I think this changes for us day by day.
Yeah. Well, keeping up with the theme here, I'm going to go back to Tarantino. I love the quote he said back like when he was doing Reservoir Dogs or maybe Pulp Fiction, but very early in his career when he said, if you truly love cinema, you can't help but make a great movie. Right. And it doesn't matter about all the stuff you learn in film school. Well, yeah, that's true. I think that's very true in terms of, aesthetics, in terms of art, there's some guys, I belong to a video store over in Culver City called Cinephile. And I speak to these guys who work there. And I'm just like, guys, if you have scripts, like give them to me because they're going to be good. I know they're going to be good. Okay. Like just the way they're talking about these movies. So I do really, truly believe that. I don't think I learned anything about my voice or about the art from film school that I wouldn't have learned on my own just from doing it. I think the important thing about going to film school is the nuts and bolts of it all, like teach us how to teach the kids how to break down a budget, teach them how to, make a lookbook and go out to investors and teach them the things that are, learnable, right. Because art, it's subjective and I'm not going to, if I make something, I go back and the teacher tells me it's shit. It doesn't mean anything. So I would focus, if I had a film school, I think I would focus more on the business aspect, which was lacking sadly at the school we went to, School of Visual Arts.
I would find a program that is mostly on producing or maybe cinematography, something that's practical. Yeah. Like what you're saying, it's hard to be in a classroom and teach directing because, like you can, what everyone has a different style of directing and everyone's different. It's really like, it's very subjective. So.
Yeah. But in this time where, it's all kind of DIY with these indie films, like you're never, even if you're just a director, you're never going to regret knowing how a budget is broken down. Right. I think that, knowing all the departments only helps you. So yeah, SVA was sadly lacking in the nuts and bolts. It was purely, hey, go out and make your art projects.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So when it comes to directing, writing, filmmaking, there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of courses. There's a lot of books, a lot of which are written by people who have never done it before. And a lot are just that entire market is just flooded with so much bullshit. But that being said, were there any formidable resources or books that you guys got into that really helped you along the way, either creatively or from a business perspective?
Well, I kind of feel like you. I feel like you need to really be cautious about all these gurus out there. It's definitely its own industry. And, I don't see many of those people as like working professionals. I think a lot of people are trying to sell you the magic, ingredients, and I think it's, you know what I mean? It's
you have to start off really respecting their work for one. I mean, if Tarantino wrote a book, I'd read it.
I like reading the books from directors. There's some really good ones out there and writers too.
Walter Murch has a good book and Sidney Lumet has a good book.
Right.
You take it with a grain of salt because everyone has their different styles. But for me, if I'm going to read a book on how to do something, I really need to be like, well, hey, it's written by Sidney Lumet. He knows a thing or two.
Yeah, right.
But honestly, I think, and I said this in the last podcast, we're lacking in film history right now. It's not part of the cultural conversation. I think that in order to be a filmmaker, you really need to go back and watch every movie you can get your hands on, different time periods, different genres, explore directors' work, things, go out of your comfort zone, watch genres that maybe you wouldn't normally watch. And because look, if everyone is just watching the same stuff, we're all going to be influenced by the same stuff. Right. And it's going to be this kind of incestuous, like boring, I'm so tired of this, like, this nostalgia we have for whatever, like the Stranger Things type of nostalgia.
Right. It's getting out of control.
Yeah, I'm very tired of it. And it's like, why don't I see movies that are influenced by the 40s, I mean, that would be really cool. So I think that everyone just needs to dig deeper. I think, like I said, when I talk to these video store guys, I know their movies are going to be good because they're like, they're so inspired by these little offbeat gems, you know? And it goes for reading too. I just like my whole life, I never stopped. I always have a book I'm reading.
Stephen King has a good book.
Yeah. Stephen King has a great book on writing.
Yeah. I love that one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually the best. That, and I like Ray Bradbury's Zen and the Art of Writing. Yeah, I think I like ones that aren't didactic. I don't like Save the Cat. I don't like when they say you need to have this on this page. And, I like when it's just more like, hey, here's the way I do things. Maybe it works for you. Maybe it doesn't.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah, the Stephen King book is actually also a lot of fun to listen to because it's him doing some narration. And yeah, I think there's some important stuff in there. But yeah, that book is just pure gold.
Yeah, I'd revisit it every couple of years. It really is inspiring. He's such an inspiration.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. Just, I mean, looking at the prolific body of work that's out there, and then you figure out how he does it. It's 2,000 words a day. Simple as that. Goddamn.
Blasting AC/DC.
Yeah. I do that with Metallica. So, second to last question. Hypothetical, starry-eyed kid who's out there who's got a great script. He's rewritten it 3 times. He feels like it's ready to go. Has no contacts in the industry. What's his first step?
We were those kids. We don't have any connections. We don't, we don't. Well, but maybe there's 3 alumni in LA. We don't have connections, and you just cold email people. Like, it's like it's crazy, and you have to risk being that crazy person that comes out of left field. But like, hey, man, like that's what we're in a crazy industry. Just find people whose work speaks to you, and who's behind that work. Who are the producers who are championing like other young directors or whatever, and take a shot in the dark. You never know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, find like-minded people. You don't want to go out if you have a horror script. You don't want to go out to the guy who makes romantic comedies. Find the people that are making your kinds of movies, and then I do think the cream rises. I think if you have something really good, it will eventually get made. Or Howard Barish, the producer of Hospitality, he has an emerging artist slate. So he's kind of setting up opportunities for first time, or in my case, second time filmmakers. And I think these people exist. You just have to find them.
Awesome. Very cool. So what's next for you guys?
We're working on a couple of things. We have a heist movie that we don't want to go too much in detail with because we're still writing it. But just always writing, always being open to opportunity. I mean, we definitely want to continue. I think going up to the next budget level will be nice. These 2 movies have been ultra low, and I think we've kind of paid our dues. So while I'm not talking about blockbusters, I think like $1 million would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, guys, this was a real pleasure and a whole lot of fun. And the movie was really fantastic. So huge congratulations.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
No, of course, I'll tell everybody I know to go check it out. Cool.
Really appreciate that.
All right. Like I said, that conversation was loaded with a lot of insights for indie filmmakers. So let's start extracting the key learnings from that conversation. Number 1, if you can't afford rehearsals, hire existing chemistry among actors. Chemistry between actors is a very important asset and is typically achieved during the rehearsal process. When making Reanimator, Stuart Gordon extensively rehearsed the entire script night after night for weeks with his cast, as if it was a play. It helped that his cast consisted of former stage actors. But for me, one of the things that makes Reanimator so good and so magical and makes it hold up today is all of these characters have great on-screen chemistry, and they're very rehearsed among each other, and it has character nuance that just really, really works. From what I understand, this was entirely achieved by Stuart Gordon's insistence on rehearsing the entire movie from beginning to end. It got all of the characters in sync and in line with each other and enabled the characters to have a lot of chemistry, which is why it makes a low-budget gore fest like Reanimator hold up to today. Given the low-budget nature of indie filmmaking, you can't always find the time to rehearse, however. Therefore, consider hiring actors who have an existing relationship. This is exactly what Nick and David did with two of their key actors in Hospitality. Emmanuel Chakwin, I can't pronounce anybody's goddamn last name, and J.R. Bourne knew each other for literally decades. Chemistry always translates on screen and strengthens the believability of your characters' relationships and therefore strengthens the movie. So if you can't build chemistry, hire pre-existing chemistry between actors who have either worked together on previous productions or are close friends. Number 2, find peripheral jobs. When he was raising money for his first film, David's casting director offered him a job as his assistant. Working in casting further enabled David to make relevant connections and get to know the inner workings of casting, filmmaking, and producing, which translated into priceless industry knowledge that helped him along his way. Rather than picking a job outside of the industry you want to be in, find ways to work within it so that those years can be productive for the knowledge they can provide and the relationships they can solidify. Number 3, and this is huge, just shoot already. Nick said that the best advice he got when he was trying to film his first movie was to go film his first movie. In the throes of fundraising for their first feature, No Way to Live, Nick and David realized that the magic budget number they were aiming for wasn't entirely necessary, and that they needed to get production underway immediately. The momentum signaled to other producers that they were the real deal, and it also added a sense of urgency to their producer pitches, which helped them get their investment decisions made faster. This is huge, and it's something that Bill Lustig speaks about in my interview with him about Maniac. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this interview. I sure did. If you enjoyed it, it would mean the world to me if you could share this episode on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. Thank you again for listening to the Nick Taylor Horror Show. We scare because we care.